I think all of us want to be a part of a church that has a strong singing culture. In other words, that people love to sing. The question is, how do we develop a culture where that happens at our church? And so today on Practical Church Planting, we're going to give you 7 tips for creating a singing culture at your church.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsian. Joining me is Dylan Dodson, and today we're talking about 7 tips for creating a singing culture at your church.
So we all want our churches we're a part of to have people sing.
Of course.
And of course, there is some things that are out of our control: context, location, the maturity of the people, believers at church. But there also is a lot that we can control. And that's why I want to do this episode, is I feel like sometimes we just say, oh, there are people aren't singing or they're not doing that. And we would say that there's actually things that we can do to help people sing. Because you probably know this, that certain churches have a huge singing culture, and some don't. And it can't just be that all the people that decided to go to that church magically sing.
Yeah.
And when we say singing culture too, we're not necessarily talking about the emotional part. Like, some people are going to put their hands up, some people aren't. We're just talking about people who are actually singing, not what that looks like. But you can tell, are people singing or are they not? And so we want to give you 7 things to consider to help people sing at your church. And because we would say again too, that I think a lot of people want to sing. They just need help, especially in our culture today. So here's number 1, not in any particular order, but number 1 is having genuine band members. And what we mean is having people that actually love Jesus and actually want to be there. Now, we're not saying you can't have people that don't love Jesus play in your band. And we're not saying, sometimes some churches pay, some churches don't pay. We're not talking about that. But we're just saying overall that you would probably be better served in creating a singing culture if the majority of those band members that are actually leading love Jesus, because people just can tell.
Yeah.
And maybe you're at a larger church and not everybody knows everybody on the band, but even like there's at least some people in your church are going to know the people on stage. And like, we've been in situations where we met somebody and then we saw them leading worship and we were like, I don't know.
You're acting very different last night.
Right. And so it makes it hard to worship if you know the people on stage don't love Jesus.
Yeah. And I mean, the people on stage, especially if they're singing, really everybody, they're leading worship. Right. So they should be in turn, they should be worshiping to lead worship. And it's hard for them to, I think it's pretty easy to spot if they're just putting on a show, right, or if they're not actually worshiping, if they're just kind of, I don't know, not that I want to be doing this, but doing it for the attention or just playing because that's their talent.
Right, totally. So again, I know it's really tricky because if there's the struggle of needing band members and not having enough. Mm-hmm. But I would just say, in our experience, it's worth not having, maybe, especially if you're a church plant, a full band every week or having everything that you want, if the trade-off is making sure people, not that they're perfect at all, but at least care about Jesus, because that does come across. So you want people that are leading you that actually want to be there as well.
Yeah.
Number 2 is limit the number of songs in your rotation, or another way to put it is a song bank. So here at New City Church, we have 30 to 40 songs that we choose from at all times. And that's it. Part of the reason is people can't sing because they don't know the songs. Especially research shows now, as you know, most people don't go to church every week. A lot of people go to church about 12 times a year. And that if they go at least 12 times a year, they'll kind of say, yes, I go to church. So if you have a ton of different songs you're choosing from, plus some people that are pretty infrequent in their attendance, it makes it really hard for people to sing if they don't know the songs. And so what we do is, whenever we want to introduce a new song, we will take a song out of our song bank or out of our rotation so that we have the same set list of songs to pull from so that people actually know what to sing when they come.
Yeah, and obviously most of us have words up on the screens, but if you don't know the song, if you've never heard it before, you don't know the melody, you don't know when different things are sung, and it just makes it so much harder to actually sing loudly the whole time you're wanting to get it right. So it's difficult if you've never heard it before.
And even if you don't know one of the songs, if you know all the other songs, you're more likely to try.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to be like, I don't know this song. I don't know this song.
Yeah,
I know this song, but I feel defeated. I don't know this last song.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not that everybody's going to know every single one, but when you have a normal one to pull from, if they've been singing, like, people are going to try because they've been singing. At least that's my experience. Like, if I don't know all the songs, like if you go to a conference or whatever and you don't know any of the songs, and then one song you finally know, it's like, I'm glad I know it, but it's not the same vibe.
Can't just like switch it on,
right? Because you've been standing there the whole time, and so limit the number of songs in your rotation.
So, question: if you're going to get to this later, then that's fine. But how often, say someone's listening who wants to introduce songs all the time, how often would you introduce a new song? Say you introduce one and take one out, that's fine to keep a certain number of songs, but how often would you bring a new one in?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I would just say, because I'm not a worship leader, director, in our experience, maybe 1 or 2 songs every I mean, every quarter.
Right.
Now, if you're trying to overhaul your worship set list, or if you're trying to whittle it down, that's different. But if you already have a set song bank, maybe one or two every 3 months. And maybe you could do seasons of more, seasons or less, but you don't want to do a new song every single month, I don't think, because then you kind of defeat the purpose a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And then plus, pretty soon, you're not going to have any songs that anybody knows because you've had to replace all of your set list.
Yep.
Number 3 is that programmatic worship hinders singing worship. Now, we're not saying, we've done a previous episode on this, that lights, sound, fog machines, guitars, whatever it was called, it's not the enemy of worship. So it's not that you can't have those things. I get that those things can help and reduce distractions. But if it's all just... This is more as a subjective thing than an objective thing, but you can just tell if everything is super polished and everything is very rigid. When you see that, it makes it hard. It makes it hard to sing.
Yeah, I agree. I remember. I don't remember if we talked about this on that episode. A long time ago here at New City, we had I don't know if you remember. We had a Sunday where basically it sounded like the sound exploded and everything went out, and it went from being I don't remember if we had a full band at a time, but it basically went from being an electric set to an impromptu acoustic set because everything went down. And I don't know. I think that you can. It speaks to whoever's leading worship if they can take something like that. Not that that's ever going to not that's going to happen to everybody, but be able to still lead worship without everything behind them, without everything else that's going on, and just be able to lead acoustically if you even want to do that. You know?
Right. And again, this is a hard line to follow because we're not saying you shouldn't have things and the bells and whistles, whatever. But if it becomes too rigid, it can become more like a concert.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between having them and relying on them.
Right. And I think, too, this goes back to the first point about having genuine band members. If you don't have genuine band members, it's going to seem more programmatic because they're not going to be worshiping. They're just going to be singing, playing songs.
Right.
So that's number 3. Number 4 is that we should pick songs that have easy melodies to sing. So again, I would say this. People often want to sing. If they're not singing, it might be because of something that the church is doing. They might be having different songs every week so nobody learns them, or they might be picking songs that are hard to sing. Now, we have to remember, in our culture today, nobody sings publicly anywhere, especially in America. Like, it's not a thing people do. It is for most of human history, but we don't have songs. We don't have anything. Like, maybe the national anthem. Although at that point, most people are just standing there. A lot of people aren't actually singing it unless... it was a patriotic moment or something difficult happened in our country, kind of bring people together. So people don't normally sing. And so if you have melodies that are hard to catch on to, people won't sing, not because they don't like the music or the songs. It's too confusing, and so they can't.
Yeah. And you can speak more to this than I can because I'm not a music person and you are. But I've heard my wife say multiple times about different songs that are sung that afterwards she's like, man, that's a really hard song to sing for a woman.
Right.
And that's something, I mean, it never dawned on me. I'm musically challenged, so I'm not worried if I'm hitting the melody or not. But I don't know. I mean, there about men and women
with the melodies and also the key, and so certain keys have to be played in certain places. So, for example, Chris Tomlin, he's one that a lot of us know. Yep. He can sing at a much higher pitch or whatever, the word is leaving me right now, than most men. Yeah. And so if you play a key and play one of his songs in the original key, most men are not going to be able to sing it. Or they're going to sing it, an octave lower, and it's just going to feel weird. And so you have to be careful, making the keys right. But also, if it's a song that's traditionally led by a man and a woman's leading it, or vice versa, you got to make sure the key actually works. Because that's happened for us a few times. We'll have a song that's traditionally male-led. We'll have a female lead it, and we'll make sure it's in a great key for her, but it's not really a great key for the congregation. So, along with the melody, you want to make sure that the key that the song is in is actually singable for men and for women.
Right.
Because again, if they can't sing it, they can't sing, and it's not because they don't want to. It's just because they can't. So pick songs that have easy melodies to sing. Even if it doesn't sound as great, if you want to sing it super high like Chris Tomlin, it doesn't. That might make you sound great if you can hit those notes.
Yeah.
But people are just going to be standing there. Number 5, pick songs that go well with the sermon. We've talked about this before, previous episodes on how we do sermon series and our weekend services, Sunday service planning, all that sort of thing. But it's a great idea to pick songs that go well, which is why part of the reason why we encourage working on your messages before. Maybe you can't get, we're at New City about 4 to 5 weeks ahead. Maybe you can't get there. That's totally fine. Even 1 week ahead. Yeah. Because it's hard to pick songs that go with the message if the message isn't written until Friday, because then the band doesn't have time to go over them because you got to get it for them to actually practice ahead of time. And you can't even do it the day of because I got to see it before the practice occurs. Yeah. So anyway, because I know a guy that's like, well, I just write it last minute and it's all about Jesus and the gospel anyway, and all songs have to do with the gospel, which is true. But if it's a song or if it's a message that's on empathy or love or forgiveness or for grace, like a key concept, there are songs like that out there. And if you can marry those songs together, especially if you do a song after the message like we normally do, people are much more apt to sing if they're singing about something that they just learned about. Yeah. And even before the message, they don't know what the message is about. If they're singing about songs that have to do with what the message is about, when the pastor starts preaching about it, they're already kind of in the mindset to take and receive and to learn from it.
Yeah, and if it's something that they've just spent the message being, hearing about and being convicted over and things like that, then they're going to be more likely to actually be worshiping when they're singing about what they just experienced, I guess.
And let me give you a point of how you know this is true. Easter just came by, and likely you probably sang songs about the resurrection.
Of course.
And you might, let's say you did a song, even before the message, but even after the message about the resurrection, you had probably higher attendance than normal, so maybe the singing was louder. But I guarantee you the singing was also louder because you just talked about the resurrection and then you sang about it.
Right.
So if you talked about God's grace, why don't you sing about God's grace? That's why it's so important to pick songs that go out with the sermon, because we are emotional beings. We like to think we're all about facts and logic and reason, but we're emotional beings. And so if we can not manipulate people, but connect the songs to the message, people are much more likely to sing.
Right.
That's number 5. Number 6, don't put too many songs in your service. Now, again, this is totally contextual based on where you live and the people you're reaching. So this is not like you need to have... This is not a description, or this is not a prescription of what you should do. This is more of a description of what to think about. For me, for example, I would love to sing 6 or 7 songs. I like music. I like to sing. It's great for me. I would enjoy it. At New City, most Sundays we do 4. Yep. Every once in a while we'll do 3 if we have something going on. Part of that is because our culture doesn't sing. And if we're reaching people that aren't just mature believers, but new believers or don't know Jesus, you have to have this tension of, yes, Sunday morning is for believers, but we also know non-believers are going to be in the room.
Right.
And if we want them to come back, we can't have an hour of worship because they're going to feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, like you said, no one sings outside of church. And so if someone doesn't go to church, coming in and singing next to 50, 100, a couple hundred, whatever people, mostly strangers, is weird. And we just have to realize that a lot of stuff that goes on in church, to an outsider who's never been to church, it's kind of weird.
Right.
And so to 3-4 songs, that's still pretty weird to them. Right. So to drag it on even longer and longer, they're getting tired. They don't know any of these songs. And not that you need to, like you said, not that you need to cater an entire service to a non-believer,
right?
But keep in mind that they are there.
Right. That's a good point. And even for us, when we do 4 songs, we never even do 4 songs in a row. In fact, we try not to do, well, I wouldn't say we try not to do. Often we don't even, 3 is I would say this way, 3 is the most we would ever do in a row. Mm-hmm. If we wanted to do all the songs before the service, for example, we would not do 4.
Right.
Or we would break it up with our next steps. We would do something else because it's easier too if you're uncomfortable, if you knew the whole thing, to have to stand there for 25 minutes is weird. And if you break it up, it's not as bad. You don't feel as uncomfortable. But limit the songs or be cognizant of the amount of songs you put in your service, because if you want people to sing, but they know they have to sing for an hour, they're not going to sing. Or they know worship's going to last 45 minutes before the message. Some people will come late. I know that's the thing that happens.
Yeah.
And so again, we want people to sing. We want to lead people. We want to help people grow. We can't assume that everybody is a super mature believer and knows everything and wants to sing all day, because you can love Jesus and still not like to sing because that's not your thing.
Right.
And so I would say limiting the number of songs would go a big way in helping people actually engage when you actually are singing.
Yeah, and another thing about that, every so often here at New City we do a worship night where we have about an hour or so of worship, and so obviously we do more than 4 songs. But even in those nights, we still break it up with somebody speaking for just a minute, or doing communion, or a little video. Something to where even though people are planning to basically spend an hour singing, they still need a break. They still need to be able to sit for a little bit, or be able to take give their voice a little break.
Because we're just trying to engage people, and one of the ways you can do that, it's better to have 3 or 4 songs that people are singing than 8 songs that's got like a 25% participation, because people know it's going to take a while. And then number 7, finally, keep the songs that your church likes to sing. Now, this may seem like common sense, but then maybe you don't do it. So going with the song bank, when we replace songs, we put songs in, we take songs out, we're cognizant of, first of all, the type of songs. You can't have all slow songs or all upbeat songs like that. And the content in the songs, you can't have all the same type of themes.
Yeah.
But we keep the songs that our church loves, and that's going to be different based on the church. But if you want people to sing, then make sure you play songs that they want to sing too, because as we talked about before, if people are enjoying or they're singing in a song, they're more likely to sing songs they maybe don't like as much or don't know, because they know there's going to be at least a few or at least one that they really get behind.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've done it before, then I assume you agree with what the song says. I don't see any reason to remove it if you're getting a good reaction from it.
And here's what's hard. Again, hymnals, and you could say, well, they just said go to this number back in the day. Well, again, back in the day, people went to church way more, and people were in a culture that sang, which we're not in anymore. And so we just want to adapt to the culture that we're in. one way to help people sing is to keep songs in your rotation that people sing, because then it'll kind of train your people to sing the songs they may not know as well.
Yeah.
So those are 7 tips for creating a singing culture at your church. Again, we just want to emphasize, we can't control all of this, but we can help make a culture where people sing more. And if you want people to sing more, I guarantee you there are at least a few things you can do to make it happen. So number 1, have genuine band members. 2, limit the number of songs in your rotation. 3, programmatic worship hinders singing worship. Number 4, pick songs that have easy melodies to sing. 5, pick songs that go with the sermon. Number 6, don't put too many songs in your service, even if it's a personal preference that you would want to do that. And then number 7, keep the songs your church likes to sing. So thanks for being with us today on Practical Church Planting. As always, practicalplanting.com/questions or the Practical Planting Facebook group.
There's that.
If you want to talk more about things or have questions for us to answer in a future episode. Until next time, we'll be with you on Practical Church Planting. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planting. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planting, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planting on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.